Hey, for all the authors that are listening out there, I wanted to share with you this great email that we received here at the Reading with Your Kids podcast from Dr. Linda Mubarak. She is a past guest and the author of Maxine's New Job. Here's the email. Dear Fatima and Jed, good news! Maxine's New Job has been nominated to receive the prestigious Henri Award at the 2018 Christian Literacy Awards for Outstanding Literacy Work in the Children's Book Division. I sincerely believe your certifying Maxine as a great read helped bring increased social media attention to the book. Thank you for the exposure and the great marketing. We are so happy for Dr. Linda Mubarak that her book, Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, Maxine's New Job, received this prestigious recognition. We would love to help your book receive that same kind of recognition. If you are interested in having your book considered for our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button, send us a note, and we'll send all the information back to you, or you can go right to our Certified Great Read page on our website. It's fun, it's easy, and it is really an effective way to let the world know that your book stands out above all the rest. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program.
Reading with Your Kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jevly, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hill. We are so very grateful that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please do be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Betsy Bird. She is coming back to the show to celebrate her illustrated middle grade novel. It's called Long Road to the Circus. Hey, Betsy, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you back on the Long Road to the Circus. Anything circus related is near and dear to my heart.
Oh, well, that's good, but I have to confess, the circus doesn't really make much of an appearance in this book. It's sort of in the future, and then makes a cameo. I'll say that there is a circus cameo here.
So tell us all about this book, please.
Oh, sure. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. Let me tell you the crazy story behind it, because that's sort of how I like to tell it. And we have to go really far back in time to my grandmother's no good uncle. And this guy, he would skip out on his farm chores. And the family story was that he was walking like 2 miles to another small town from Burr Oak, Michigan to Mendon, Michigan to visit an elderly ex-circus performer and learn how to make his farm horses do circus tricks. We thought it was a crazy story. Well, fast forward like into the future, my mom's working at a bookstore with the great illustrator, David Small is making an appearance. And he happens to casually mention he lives in the Morantat house. And my mom's wheels start turning, and she looks into it, and sure as shooting, it's the same Madame Morantat, the same ex-circus performer. And she tells me this, and I kind of file it away. And then years later, think to myself, now what if I did a book? And what if it had Madame Morantat? And what if it had the no-good uncle? And what if David Small did the art because he lives in her house? And so, I came up with a picture book idea, and I showed it to David, and David said, I see this as more of a novel. And I was like, no! So I went back, and I rewrote it as a novel, and he liked it. And lo and behold, we have the book today, The Long Road to the Circus.
Wow. What a beautiful long road to the middle grade novel.
There you go. No one has said that yet. I have to credit you. I've been waiting for someone to say that. No one has said it until now. So there you go.
Well, I'm happy to be the first. I love talking to authors about where they get the inspiration for their stories, and I especially love it when things just kind of fall into place, like, David is living in her house, and you have this connection.
It's even crazier than that. Yeah, no, here's the weirdest part. Well, I visited David, so he could show me the house. And then he invited me to meet a local historian who simply 2 years earlier had done a huge exhibit on Madame Morantat and handed me a huge packet of all the information and research I could possibly need to know about Madame Morantat. And I was like, wow. So it really was just the perfect time.
Yeah. Well, we have to get in and find out who Madame Morantat was. Okay,
so Madame Morantat was amazing. As David likes to say, she was world famous in Mendon. During her time, she really was kind of world famous. She was born Emma Peake, and then in the course of things, and that's a fun story in and of itself, took on the name Madame Morantat. So Madame Morantat was a horsewoman, and she truly believed in riding side saddle. So to this day, she holds the world record for riding a horse side saddle and high jumping. So she has it's a 7 foot, 4-inch leap, on side saddle. She owns that record. She has another record. You see, she loved ostriches. She had a huge ostrich farm, and she had a big, nasty ostrich named Gaucho, who she somehow trained to pull a cart with a horse, her horse Bonnie Ann. And to this day, it's the only record that anyone knows of a horse and an ostrich pulling a cart together. And that's sort of the impetus for the book.
I love it. Boy, oh boy. You were mentioning she's riding side saddle and doing these jumps. I can't even sit on a horse with the seatbelt. I've been thrown off.
Exactly.
I've been on 3 horses in my life, and they all threw me off. So,
yeah. And then you're riding with both legs on the one side of the horse. It seems like a terrible plan.
Yeah. It really does. I don't know. And the ostrich, that's incredible. I would have loved to have met Madame Morantat. She seems like a really cool, out there person.
She was. I mean, she had her own train car with her name on the side. She was with Ringling Brothers at a certain point. And she went to England. She performed there, I guess, 3 different times, and the King of England came all 3 times that she was there. He loved watching her perform. He just thought she was amazing. She had a very kind of post-Victorian, kind of buttoned up kind of look to her, but she had this huge brooch of a person riding a horse side saddle that she would wear at her throat. And if you look at any photo of her, no matter what age, she's wearing that brooch, in some way. So yeah, she was formidable and fascinating.
Yeah. One of the things I love, about you telling this story is, we're talking about helping. So many of us are trying to help our daughters and the young women in our lives to understand that they can do anything that they want and to really empower them. It's great to look back and to see that there have been these really strong, empowered women throughout history.
Oh, yeah. And, it's funny. She's not the heroine of the book. The heroine of the book is Susie, who's a 12-year-old girl who desperately wants to get out of Burr Oak, Michigan, and thinks this ostrich is my key. This is how I'm getting out of this two-horse town. And she hears about Madame Morantat, this woman who grew up in the same area of Michigan, but went off and became world famous, and then came back. And so there's 2 mysteries there. How did she become famous and get out of this town and travel the world, which is what Susie so desperately wants to do? And then why did she come back?
Wow. Hey, how much convincing did David need to do to you to change the story from a picture book to a novel?
So it's so funny. I did not know, prior to, I think I did a virtual presentation with David last week, and he mentioned something that I had never heard. This was the first time I heard it. He was like, well, because I live in the Morantat house, yours was not the first Morantat manuscript that had been handed to me. And I was like, what? He was like, oh no. There was a guy at the gym and this person over here. They all would hand me these Morantat, and they never interested him. And even he tells me the picture book I handed him, he wasn't that interested. I mean, he was kind of interested, but he wasn't that. So, he tells me make it into a novel. I do. And I filled it with ostriches. And he got very excited because that meant he got to illustrate ostriches. And he'd never done that before. And stranger still, people trying to ride ostriches, which is what Susie decides she's going to do. She's going to ride an ostrich. possibly side saddle. It's a whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And so David was much more intrigued once he got whiff of the sheer number of ostriches he was going to be able to illustrate, and mean-spirited ostriches, because there's nothing better than a cranky ostrich if you're going to be drawing something.
Is there anything other than cranky ostriches? I've met a few in my life, and they all seem pretty nasty.
I think they're all pretty. They're kind of like what is it? Camels who spit. If an ostrich could spit, it would so spit. They're just incapable of it. But yeah, but apparently Gaucho was. There's a great newspaper article that I have that I sometimes show the kids, which is it was a piece that was in the Mendon paper saying that Madame Morantat is back from some of her travels. People are to be warned about Gaucho. The bird is in a vicious mood. That's Gaucho for you.
Wow, how our world has changed from, not too long ago. That was news, that an ostrich was grouchy and vicious.
It's true. Well, it was a small town, but it's funny. I've got family in the area, obviously. I've sort of populated the book with my family, my ancestors. And a friend of mine who lives in the area wrote me, after she heard about the book and told me, oh, well, you know what? I can vouch for the ostrich paddock because my grandfather had to walk by them every day on the way to school, and he was terrified of them because they would, they'd kind of run alongside him and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. You obviously had, a love or an interest in Madame Morantat when you started. How did your view of her change as you were writing the book?
It was interesting because I wanted to get direct quotes from her into the book as much as I could. There aren't many. I mean, this is the problem with dealing with someone from the early 1900s, right? You just don't have that much information. If there's a biography of her out there, it must have been locally made, and I have never seen it. It's very hard to find information, but I was able to locate some newspaper articles. I say I was able. It was in the packet that I was handed. So there were some quotes, and she had, people asked her, how do you train your horses? And she was explaining her process, and then she says something along the lines of they listen to me, and then I am the woman of the day, or something like that. And I was putting that in. Yep. Okay. That's a good line. So she was, the only time you ever heard her really get upset was when she came across the idea of women not riding side saddle. And she just did not approve. Simply did not approve. That was not proper. The proper way was side saddle with your foot hooked into that special saddle so that you, I guess, couldn't get flung to your death. But if you look at her in those images, her back, it's like there's a ramrod, steel spine in that woman. She is not leaning over at all. It is very impressive. As I went through it, I had to I had to solve the mystery of why she came back to Mendon, quite frankly, because people there did not really appreciate her. I can tell you that much. They were not Madame Morantat fans.
Yeah, I suppose somebody who's traveled the world and is fairly extravagant and outspoken, and a woman at that time who is empowered wouldn't be welcome in a small Midwestern town. Well,
and that's the thing. She got the name by marrying one of the local rich boys and then annulling the marriage within a week. And part of the deal was she got to keep his name. So you can imagine what that kind of woman was looked upon. She married one of the Morantat boys and then immediately was see ya, suckers. I'm out of here with your name.
Wow. It's interesting you're talking, about your 12-year-old star of the book and, wanting to find her way out of this small town. I think that's something that a lot of kids feel, no matter if they're in a small town or big city, inner city. It's hey, I'm here and I'm kind of stuck, and I'd like to spread my wings and travel the world and explore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. Also, she has the small problem of being a girl in a very small town where no one really leaves in, sort of the very early 1920s. So, it's really hard to how do you get away from that? Usually what I think she gets counseled and someone's like, well, you should just marry. And then you'll marry someone who like travels the world. And she's like, that's not quite what I'm going for here. I surely there's another way. And she has to sort of forge that new way herself. And the way she decides to forge is, I'm going to learn how to ride an ostrich side saddle. Because no one's tried that before.
That's wild. That's wild. I find it interesting that David was so excited about the possibility of illustrating so many wild and grumpy ostriches.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you remember, like, most of the illustrations happened during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So, I finished the manuscript before COVID for the most part, though I think I added a chapter or two here during COVID. But then COVID hits, and David really prefers to do one book at a time. So all he had to work on was this book. And normally they try to separate the author and the illustrator from communicating. But in our case, we were constantly talking back and forth. And he would say, I feel like putting chickens at the beginning of this one. Could you write some chickens in? And I'd be like, chickens going in. And I'd put the chickens in and he'd add the chickens to the thing and it would look great. And, it was just, I tried to give him as much space as possible. The last thing an illustrator wants is for a author to be peering over their shoulder being like, I imagined her teeth a little different. Like none of that. And, no, but we got along like gangbusters. It worked out really well for both of us, I think.
That's wonderful. Is this the first time that you had, that opportunity to collaborate with an illustrator?
Yes and no. Generally the advice you get is do not walk into a book deal with an illustrator already attached. I have never not done that. My first picture book, Giant Dance Party, Brandon Dorman, the illustrator, brought me on board. And so we walked in, and then when I did the Great Santa Stakeout, my agent said to me, like, who do you want to illustrate, by the way? I was like, oh, I'd love Dan Santat. He's like, great, go ask Dan Santat, and then we'll go approach them. And I was like, okay. And so we did. But during the actual creative process, I did not tend to have any contact with them. I'd see the final product, or I'd see sketches that they were showing the editor and that the editor showed me. It was very different with David because he would literally show me things in progress. He showed me the wall of art, each art assigned to whichever chapter, because he does a lot of spot art throughout the book. And so he'd show me the things for that, and I might give him a comment here or there, and he'd ask my opinion on something. And so this was far more collaborative than I'd ever done before.
And did you enjoy that process?
Oh, I did. I mean, who would not enjoy getting a peek into the studio of David Small as he works? I mean, come on. That's sort of living the dream as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, you are currently a librarian, correct?
That is correct. I am a librarian.
How did COVID change your mission at the library?
Well, it's funny. My library, so we shut down like everyone else did, but then we just pride ourselves. We're lucky. We're in a town that has, I think 90% of the people here have gotten at least one COVID vaccine shot, and something like 85% have gotten the second one. So right from the start, the town, we decided we were going to open up. We opened up like maybe 2-3 months after the initial shutdown, and we never closed again. However, I think the way we did it was we were broken into teams. So we would spend half our time working from home and half our time in the library. So I did a lot of working from home, which meant, honestly, that I had a lot of time to communicate with David, more so than I would have if I had been walking to work every single day. But the library's mission pretty much stayed the same. We set up an entire complex system of pickups, because nobody was allowed in the library. We were allowed to work there if we wanted to, but, nobody was allowed in for quite some time. And mostly we had people picking up their books on the outside. And so, but no one has we only had 2 employees get sick, and that was from family members. So yeah, we've got a pretty good track record.
Yeah, one of the reasons I love having librarians on who are also authors, it's a great way to remind everybody what a valuable resource libraries are, whether we're talking about a public library or we're talking about a school library.
Absolutely. Like, one of the things we did the minute we closed was we set it up so that people could instantly get library cards from home, regardless of showing ID. And then they could check out ebooks and e-audiobooks. So our usage just went through the roof, and I was buying ebooks left and right and center just to try to keep up with the demand, because if people couldn't go into the library, how else were they going to read and listen to their audiobooks? And that was a great program. And then once we opened again, we told people, okay, now bring in, just some form of ID, and then we'll set you up with a real library card. And it was we got more than 700 people signed up that way. It worked out really, really well.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the things I was asking my beautiful wife, who just retired from teaching after teaching for 34 years, and asking her, how can we get more of her parents, the parents of the inner city kids that she was working with, how can we get more of them to read with their kids? And one of the things that she said to me was really eye-opening was, so many of the parents that she's worked with over the years can't read, or they can't read in English, or they aren't comfortable enough reading. A library can be a great resource for those folks too. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have so many ways that you can have basically someone else read to your kids. We've got, there's this new, this book, that come with little recordings of the books with the books. They're called Vox. And then, of course, we have the CDs that come with the books, that you can play the CD with the book, but, who has a CD player these days? We have the playaways, which are sort of, they're like little contained, ways of listing, like each one's one per book, and you can listen to the book. So it's kind of like having like a little portable audiobook, but just for that one book. And those are very popular. And then, of course, the e-audiobooks, as long as you can get them set up, they're very easy to use. It's just a question of getting them set up. Yeah. And then, of course, the librarians themselves and, could recommend everything from like wordless books to comics to, there are a lot of different options.
Yeah. And I really hope that everybody listening, even if you aren't a regular user of your public library, just support the library and especially support your kids' school having a library, because they're so important, and we can't allow them not to be funded and supported.
Absolutely. There is nothing about that statement I do not agree with.
So getting back to the long road to the circus, what's the reaction been to the book so far?
Oh, it just came out last week, so, it's pretty early, but I've been getting some nice reaction from people who read it already. I got a very cute tweet the other day from someone who called the book huggable. I was like, now that's a new one. I have never had one of my books described as huggable before, but there you go. And, someone else was complimenting the language, and it's been getting a nice sort of reception, which is lovely. Yeah.
I'm thinking that this would be an especially fun book for a family to co-read together, and then to talk about, and on the way to the library or on the way to school or dance class. And I also know that it's available as an ebook, so I think it's something. Some really fun conversations could be inspired by this book.
Oh yeah, it could definitely be a bedtime book. The chapters are a good bedtime book length. Since I have to read to my kids every night, I'm sort of gotten a sense of what a good bedtime length is for a chapter. And of course, it has an audiobook too. And I actually got to audition I guess it was like 6 different women who were auditioning to be the narrator of the audiobook. And so I got to listen to them all read the same, section of the book. It was fascinating. It was like, it was so nice that they let me as the author make any kind of a, suggestion on that.
Yeah. And before we go, I know that you're also the host of a great podcast for kids. It's called Story Seeds. Can you let us know a little bit about that?
Oh, Story Seeds is so fun. So this is a podcast that pairs authors with, real, big author, Jason Reynolds and, Catherine Applegate and people like that with kids. And the kids have ideas for stories, and they'll probably be like sort of along the same lines as what the authors write. And the kids and the authors have a conversation. They discuss different story ideas, and then they basically write the story together. And then we read the story on the podcast. And it's just a really cool collaboration-based podcast. And, the kids listening to the podcast can be inspired to write, their story prompts for the kids who are listening. It's really for kids who like to write or want to be writers or maybe just like listening to writers.
Yeah. Well, I know folks are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Story Seeds, more about The Long Road to the Circus, and more about Betsy Bird.
Yeah, well, you can always come on my website. That's BetsyBirdBooks.com. Come on by. All the information should be right there.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Long Road to the Circus, the new illustrated middle grade novel by our guest, Betsy Bird. Hey, Betsy, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lisa McMahon. She'll be here to celebrate Clarice the Brave. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, we would love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and be sure to check out our Pinterest page, Reading With Your Kids. We'd also love it if you could sign up for our free newsletter. You can do that at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Betsy Bird. Be sure to check out her illustrated middle grade novel, Long Road to the Circus. I also want to thank my team, Alana Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Michael Murphy. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.